Welcome into Truth to Power with Kyle Wallace. I am your host of Truth to Power with Kyle Wallace, and we're coming to you live from the Pella Windows Indoors of Wisconsin podcast studio in downtown Milwaukee. You all know I am so excited because we have been having this series where we have been speaking with all of the gubernatorial candidates here in the state of Wisconsin, and I'm so excited to be joined by Francesca Hong, Assemblywoman Francesca Hong, today on Truth to Power. How you doing today?
I am doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, one thing I love about Francesca is that she's so conversational and just a nice person. So just to, not to gas you up to start, we're going to get into it. But the great thing I love is last time I saw her was months ago, and I told her about my fiance, now wife, and about who she likes, and she followed up with me months later. Like, that's real. That's absolutely real that you remembered that we even talked about my wife and who she's voting for.
Well, it was important for me to know that you have a better half.
I do have a better half. Ain't that the truth? I've learned that as well. That's why she is now my half now with my beautiful ring. So yeah, thank you so much. But Francesca, let's just get right into it. Can you tell us why anyone listening or watching here on YouTube should vote for you out of a still crowded and, let's be honest, a little bit more drama-filled Democratic field now?
If you are tired of the status quo and the way that things are, ready for change, but steady leadership that actually wants to put working class people first and have a state that works for working class people, vote for Francesca Hong on or before August 11th.
I like that. Now, for me, I just think about it, like, how have you done it? How have you taken this campaign, going from virtually, you weren't unknown, but I would say to the masses in the state of Wisconsin, when you're talking about assembly members, if in your local area, people know who you are, but across the state, people don't. You go from virtually an unknown to somebody your campaign has captivated people across the state of Wisconsin, but also across the U.S. How have you done this?
Not alone. In community, building community. I think that sometimes, campaigns miscalculate where voters are at, what they're saying. And I'm lucky to be working right now, not as much as I would like, as a bartender. I've been in the service industry for most of my life. My life is talking to people, everyday folks, about their hopes, their dreams, what they are frustrated about, what they need a vent about. And I think that has given me a clearer understanding that people want change. They want different. They want someone who's not as who's willing to say it like it is and keep things conversational, but also who's gotten things done. I've passed bipartisan legislation, and I've stepped up to run for office or build community organizations in times of chaos and crisis. I ran for office in 2020 and became the first Asian American legislator. In 2016, when I opened my restaurant and had a baby, I also formed the Culinary Ladies Collective and helped raise over $20,000 for Planned Parenthood, making my restaurant into more of a community space to make sure people could come as they are. And I think that now in this campaign, as a candidate for governor, I'm only carrying forward what I think is worthy of people and how we represent them. And where folks are at is real tired, real frustrated with politics. And I think that means that we have to understand the plays and players, the playbook that we used. We were just talking about sports earlier, so I'm going to go back to this. I think it's time for some new plays, maybe a new coach and a new playbook.
So when you travel across the state, what are some of the biggest concerns that you're hearing from constituents? Because you just talked about people are tired, right? And I think when we say people are tired, it's farmers, it's rural area people, it's people in the city of Milwaukee, it's everywhere. What are some of the biggest issues that people are talking to you about?
Data centers, healthcare, public schools, overall existential dread of where we are with the Trump regime, but also very just hyper locally, like folks who are concerned about public lands and clean water. We're still talking about lead pipes in 2026.
Here in the city of Milwaukee, big issue.
And so, and an overall frustration with politics as they are. And I think that fatigue comes from stress and people having to make, it's not as It's not as simple, and let's not oversimplify that it's about just food on the table. The stress of having to put a bill on hold, in another grocery bill that's on credit card, in knowing that, okay, I'm about to pay summer camp again for my kiddo, and then we've got school supplies coming up in just a month and a half now. It's that in New York City, when Zoran Mamdani said that they were going to do a rent freeze, folks could feel their mental health and their stress levels come down, knowing that predictability, because things are so uncertain and in flux right now.
I think that's such importance. And so kind of talking about all that, when you talk about your vision, what is your vision for Wisconsin over the next 4 years? How will life be different for an average Wisconsin family if you are elected as governor of the state of Wisconsin?
You're going to see fewer potholes. There's going to be a public option for healthcare. We're going to see funding coming in for schools and ending the cycle of referenda. Raise the minimum wage. And I think that with a Democratic trifecta, I see healthy school meals for all and paid leave for all on the horizon as well.
You said the trifecta. I think that's interesting because the state Senate seems like it is really, really in play. The Assembly is in play as well. But if you don't get a trifecta, now you're talking about Republicans who, on a national level, we've seen during the Obama time of how obstructionist they can be and how, they're not always bipartisan. And so do you have any, examples of why do you have a belief that if you are elected governor, that if you don't get a trifecta, you can still actually get these bold campaign promises actually accomplished?
We passed bipartisan legislation on diversity, inclusion, and equity. A Republican-led bill to include Asian American history in K-12 public schools. Governor Evers signed Act 266, and that was one where I worked closely with Republicans, the committee chair on the Committee on Education, and we got it done. And it was a coalition across the state, small business owners, educators, students, people who built and organized to see that bill get passed. And relationships and information is currency in government. And maintaining those, building those, and not being a governor that is a gatekeeper, but a governor that is willing to collaborate and cooperate with folks who want to put working class people first. I show up offering that I'm going to work harder than they are, and that they can trust that in me.
Okay, because my big thing is
you got to show up for your colleagues too.
No, you definitely do, because I guess my biggest concern is that there's a lot of candidates who are making bold, promises, and you talked about paid leave. I'm a big believer in paid leave. I'll be very honest with you. When I used to work at Marquette University, we got 3 months when you had family leave, right, as a male, not just as a female. And I worked somewhere else and you get 10 days. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy to me. But that's the reality for a lot of folks who work in private corporations or work in different places. And so I guess is when you talk about talking about DEI is one thing, but talking about expanding Badger Care, talking about paid leave, talking about lowering property taxes by taxing corporations and millionaires, these are ambitious, and it just seems that Republicans just won't get along with that. So how do you find the common ground to convince them that this is best for their constituents?
It may have been more ambitious in the past, but part of organizing and having a campaign that has a strong ground game, both in the digital organizing spaces and in relational organizing, I think it's important to remember that people are now realizing that they deserve better, and we haven't done a good enough job as Democrats of showing people what is possible. Democrats have introduced solid bills. I mean, this is legislation that's ready to go, paid leave for all. And we didn't always have the mic and the united mic in amplifying that this is our priority. And I think that you have to have pressure from communities in being able to hold their elected officials accountable to move on this. The campaigns for candidates right now, I want to make sure we're taking that organizing apparatus and campaigning on issues after. So it's about that outside pressure game on elected officials to get them to move in the building. I don't think it's as bold, as ambitious anymore because people are realizing that it's less of a benefit and more of a right to have affordable health care, to not have to choose between making rent and the hours. I remember going to work sick as a line cook because I didn't want to lose hours. But we have folks who are taking care of aging parents, of new babies, maybe somebody who is a survivor and they need to stay with you. You need to take off time for them. This is something that is actually helps stabilize the economy, is good for the economy, and certainly is something that should be a right for workers.
Yeah, and so another thing is that it's really buzzy to talk about taxing the rich, right? What do you mean by taxing the rich, and who are the rich by definition? People who are making $250,000 in a household, $500,000, or the millionaires. What does that look like for those who say, well, I don't want to be taxed? Will they actually be taxed, and what does that look like?
We've had a deeply inequitable tax system here in Wisconsin, and look at where we are when it comes to making sure that people have livable wages and that we're seeing investments go into the things that all communities use, like roads, like EMS services, our public parks and our public libraries. When we say tax the rich, we mean moving from a system where the lowest income earners are paying a higher tax rate than some of the highest income earners. And Republicans have been pushing for a flat tax. We're asking folks to pay their fair share. And for us, that is on the millionth earned income, it would be an additional tax bracket. Our tax brackets right now are incredibly wide. So somebody who may be making, I think it's like $465,000, that they're paying the same tax rate as somebody who's in the 750s. That's a pretty significant different income. And then adding a 1% increase on the billion income tax class. But beyond that, having a local income taxing authority. Milwaukee had to go through Act 12 to be able to get authority to increase the sales tax. We want to give local governments the option to have a local government income tax or a wealth tax or estate tax established in the community.
So also now getting into what I call just, how politics are, is why do you believe Tony Evers endorsed David Crowley after re-entering the race so quickly?
Why do I believe? The governor has the right to endorse who he wants. I think that it's difficult when you when you're going back on something that you've said. Right now, many people struggle to trust politicians. I don't give anybody I don't think there's really any reason folks are given right now to trust politicians. That's why I believe that I'm a public servant first and not a politician first. And, we are going to stay focused in making sure voters know that this election belongs to them. And because we want to build a Wisconsin that belongs to them.
I appreciate that because I'll be, I keep it real. I'll keep it 100. I mean, it's clear to me that, it seems that the Democratic establishment is trying to do anything and everything they can to keep you from winning the nomination. That's from my perspective and other people's perspective as well. Why do you think the party leaders seem to be reluctant to truly get behind and support your campaign?
First, the governor is not the party. The governor is one of the most powerful elected officials, if not the most powerful Democrat in the state. But he is not the Democratic Party. He is one individual and one elected official. And his decision to endorse the county executive, that was not a collective decision by the party. I believe that.
Okay.
I think it's important to ask what we mean by saying the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
I myself and our campaign, we are focused on challenging the status quo.
Okay.
The status quo to us is, again, we invested in digital organizing and our ground game heavy. we have an amazing campaign staff that I trust with my whole heart, and we're making sure that, our folks are taken care of so that we can build the strongest campaign possible. It's, not the same strategy that everyone else used. I think a strategy that's working great because we are considered the front runners. I do not believe that the party is trying to interfere. And by party, I mean the people who work at the party.
Okay. So you just think that
And
Tony Evers has a choice? Because I know the
Tony Evers made his choice.
Yep.
That was his choice. The people have a choice. The people have a choice between many, I hear all the time going to town halls where folks are like, sometimes I wish like we could combine you all. Like we got a deep bench. But we have to ask who is the right leader for this moment. And voters are telling us that with their growing support and momentum and the success that we are seeing in our campaign. But no complacency. You bet your ass we're working harder than anyone else.
I love to hear that because I know one of the biggest things is that, again, I'm very transparent about my angst because I'm very transparent. I want the Democratic candidate to be able to win and have the easiest path to winning. Do you kind of recognize the angst that some Democrats have when it comes to just some of the progressive ideals and things that or what you're a part of that may make the election not winnable? Because I wholeheartedly believe every candidate can beat Tom Tiffany, but maybe a Joel Brennan who's a little bit more moderate may have an easier road than maybe a Francesca Hong. Do you understand some of the angst that they have?
It's human nature to be a little afraid of change.
Mm-hmm.
But in times of crisis and chaos, there is the greatest opportunity for change to ensure that we don't come back to these moments. And so I think we got big problems that require big solutions, and we don't have a ton of time, and we're working alongside a federal government, a regime that is making it harder for Wisconsinites to be able to take care of themselves and their families and their loved ones. I understand that change can feel scary, but I think right now it's scarier to think about not changing things in a transformative way.
And one thing I really do believe is that right now, because Wisconsin is a very purple state, it's a swing state, but I do believe the current state of the economy, and I do think people are getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, but also sick and tired of the fact that they get sold these dreams. I really believe Donald Trump got elected the first time is because people believed that he was actually going to bring this change. And now I think we're seeing with 2024 and now is that a lot of folks feel duped. A lot of folks, I remember there were signs around different communities saying Kamala means high taxes and higher prices. Well, it's still high taxes and higher prices still currently now. And I feel like a lot of folks are waking up to that. So that's, I guess, I do believe that this change is something that can happen, and we'll see which candidate has it. I know you're working your butt off to be able to get that nomination. And so the next thing I do want to ask, I want to get a clarification because I know a lot of people, what is it like the Democratic Socialists of America? That movement gained a lot of steam over the last year. Can you just let us know what's the difference between a Democrat and Democratic Socialists of America?
Well,
or just
DSA is an organization, right?
A socialist more than the actual organization.
So DSA is an organization. The Democratic Party of Wisconsin is an organization, political party. I am a Democratic Socialist, and that means that I root my policies and principles in democracy, fairness, and human rights. It means that even if you vote for Tom Tiffany, I want to make sure that you have affordable health care, access to healthy foods, affordable housing, and a great education, because I think these things are human rights. And I think that working class people are, because it is our work that keeps the economy going. Mm-hmm. We are the economy. Yep. That we should have our fair share of a say, whether that's in the electoral process or in making sure that the taxes that we pay are going to the things that we are prioritizing. And when it comes to democracy, I think that we can't have a true democracy unless we have more working class people who feel like they have control of their own personal economy, of the local economy, that working class people are seeing, their taxes and the work that they do actually come back to their communities. It's about putting workers first and working class people first, and not the billionaires and the mega corporations. And I think right now, a lot of people are seeing that the democratic socialist policies are quite sensible. And the bills that I've authored, healthy school meals for all, paid leave for all, funding public schools, giving local government local control and their fair share of taxes from the state, instead of the state hoarding our money in a surplus. I think these are things that are sounding more and more practical. And these are the things that, so sewer socialism was born in this city.
Mm-hmm.
Trash removal, utilities, snow removal. These are things that we are part of our everyday lives. And these are the things that I think if we make better and actually make investment in, we think about government less. So maybe I'm for a little bit smaller government. But right now, government is in every dominating conversations. It is dividing people. And as a democratic socialist, I know that government can and must be a force of good.
I appreciate you sharing that, especially because a lot of folks think it's a very scary term, but in reality, like
the word social and democrat is in it.
but
Social means people.
Exactly.
You said I'm good at talking to people.
You are good at talking to people, so I love the fact that you're able to clarify that. Something else, hot button issue, is the defund the police statement. What does that mean to you?
Being serious about public safety, in investing fully in the things that data and has shown us actually prevent crime, in helping people feel safer in their communities and knowing that safety is a human right. When we have great out-of-school programs for our youth and opportunity and places for our kids to go and learn more about themselves and thrive. When we invest in our tech colleges, when we make sure that we are providing, addiction services, mental health resources. These are all things in helping people feel safe and heal and be cared for. And right now, we have a system that our state incarcerates more Black and brown people at higher rates than any other state in the country. Our COs have high suicide rates. Our women's prisons are so overpopulated that there are people who are sleeping in cots in gymnasiums and incarcerated or shackled potentially when they're giving birth. And we are putting billions of dollars into this system when we need to be putting investment back into communities. And so I think that we have to have a serious conversation about public safety and focus on outcomes and results. And that's what I plan to do as governor, is work with local government leaders, faith leaders, domestic violence prevention programs, and look at allocating resources in places that both help heal, prevent crime, invest in our kids, because right now the system we got has the Epstein class roaming free.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds more like reallocation. So just so for the record, because again, this is a hot button issue. Do you support defunding the police? Yes.
We cannot, and we do not have a responsible system in place where we, defund law enforcement or police resources. And if anyone has been defunding police, it has been Robin Vos and the Republicans who have been defunding shared revenue at local governments. And they have been doing that for the last 16 years. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in governing by slogans. I want to invest in communities.
I love that, because I think the biggest thing that people try to act like is like, oh, people want to defund police, where you gave a conversation talking about what you imagine for it to look like, reimagining where these resources.
And data shows.
Mm-hmm. No, especially
data shows that this is what helps prevent crime.
You know, in a city like Baltimore, they were very strategic with their young mayor there, who was very strategic about his plan. Right, and it took a couple of years, but it seems like last year that crime was down. They were implementing, had folks roaming the streets. So just that reimagining and reallocating the funding. But I love the fact that we now know that you're not saying defund, but you're saying we need to look at where we're funding when it comes to policing.
Serious about safety. We need to be serious about safety, and Wisconsin needs to do a much better job of doing that for all of for everyone in Wisconsin, including those who are incarcerated.
Now, Francesca, there was a report about a $2.2 million ad buy trying to boost your campaign coming from the GOP over the next couple of weeks, trying to label you as too liberal. Like, what do you think when you hear stuff like that? $2.2 million in ads for you?
I think that's unforced air around the Republicans. Let them stay mad and let them spend money. We are staying focused on what we are going to do. And what we are going to do is build permanent affordability, to fund our local governments, to fund our public schools, to have fair taxes, make sure corporations pay their fair share, and stop the data centers.
I love that. You know what I love about that answer? I can just tell in your mind. You probably heard this before. It's like, all right, I see what y'all trying to do. Mess around and find out. That's what it is. I like that. Listen, y'all understand Francesca. She's competitive, and I love it. I absolutely love it because I'm a sports guy, and I love the fact that you enjoy sports, local sports, but you also are very competitive because, I mean, it's a competition, and I love the fact where you're like, all right, we're going to see. I might miscalculate on that one.
And it's a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
I'm building a strong team. And I think that's what we have to do. This campaign is nothing without our volunteer community, our staff, folks who are paying attention from across the country. But I will say ours is a campaign that has more individual donations than Tom Tiffany's campaign. He is a sitting congressman, disgraced, but still an elected official. He's got billionaire backers, and we have more individual donations than him and more unique donors than him.
I love it.
So we are already beating him.
Now, for education-wise, I know this is another one here, especially Milwaukee, is a big issue. And the Trump administration passed the first ever federal K-12 education tax credit called the Educational Choice for Children Act. This allows for private donations to be made to go towards scholarships for students to attend private schools. Now, I know if you're elected governor, if it's still even an option, I know that's something that you're not for. Can you explain a little bit your stance on public education, choice, and charter? And funding.
Yeah. We have a constitutional obligation to ensure that every child has access to a sound and basic public education. And right now, we have two school funding systems, and it's unsustainable. I believe that public dollars belong in public schools, and that all schools should be under the standards, if you are receiving public dollars, of accountability, transparency, reporting requirements, and that in order to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, people should know where their money is going. We hear this a lot from my Republican colleagues. And so our plan is to phase out the voucher program, and that it must be a collaborative, and it will be a lengthier process, and we want to make sure that we are giving our families a seat at the table and making sure that the process is thoughtful, and making sure that our public school districts have the resources that they need, and that people that it's as least disruptive as possible. I foresee this as a potentially 20, 30-year process.
Okay, 20, 30-year process.
Because I want to do it right.
So
the statewide to then Racine to then Milwaukee.
Okay, so the phase-out program, because this is a very important issue. I mean, for me, I'm a 220 kid, so not really the same, but money is being sent from a little bit being funded towards where I went Whitefish Bay. But I do know when it comes to the choice program, this is something in Milwaukee where MPS is not only one of the worst districts in the state, it's a struggling district across the country. And so for a family that might be struggling to make ends meet and can't afford to maybe send their kid to one of these private choice schools, this is another lifeline to ensure that their kid has a better academic opportunity. A lot of folks will have to choose to move out of the community in order to ensure their kid has a better academic opportunity. So when it comes to that choice program, I know here in the city of Milwaukee, it's extremely controversial, but a lot of folks like it. And there's a lot of good schools that are doing great things. Yeah. So what do you say to a family who is, you know, in MPS? And I know you said it's going to be over time, but what do you say to them if they say, well, that's a non-starter? Like I'm a firm believer in choice. What do you say to that family about what are my options here in MPS? They're not great.
We want to make sure that MPS gets the resources that they need. That I would say even before the choice program started, that MPS was being neglected. The city of Milwaukee and the county of Milwaukee has been demonized, under-resourced, and scapegoated for generations. And so I think that this has a much broader, of course, this is going to have, we want to minimize the impact as much as possible for all of our families here in Milwaukee. The schools that we're talking about, making sure that we hold accountable first. You know, some of these online voucher schools that are receiving public dollars, where there is discrimination, where voucher schools get to choose their students and not have the students choose them. And so a lengthy, thoughtful process in making sure that we have stakeholders at the table and ensuring that as we are simultaneously adequately funding our public schools in phasing out a program. And I think it's important that for some of these schools that they hold more responsibility in creating more scholarship programs and keeping their programs accessible to families. That, you know, that's a reality of public-private partnerships at times, is that I believe that, you know, you negotiate fair deals, but there's also that responsibility in, you know, why state dollars going into unaccountable private schools when our public schools have been deeply under-resourced for decades. This is untenable, and I do believe that regardless of your relationship to public schools or connection to it, strong public schools make for stronger communities and stronger economies.
Okay. Any room for any negotiation specific? Again, I'm speaking to, this is from Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. Is there any room for having a conversation to bring in local leaders, bring in educational leaders as well to have a conversation about, all right, well, let's hear from you all and let's see if there's any room for negotiation with this? Or
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
This is, we can't, the reason why I don't say that I have a full fleshed out plan, that would be irresponsible without having all of those conversations with important community leaders first, and most importantly, families. And, you know, the folks who are in the public school district as well. This has to be about putting a responsible end in a program that is siphoning public dollars away from public schools, but ensuring that we're maintaining as many educational opportunities as possible and closing opportunity gaps for our students here in Milwaukee and across the county and across the state. Because again, we have a constitutional obligation to ensure that every child has a sound and basic public education.
Absolutely. Now, data centers has become one of the biggest economic development debates here in the state of Wisconsin. Supporters say they bring jobs and investments, while critics worry about the energy use, water consumption, and what taxpayers are giving up in return. How do you think Wisconsin should balance those opportunities economically with the challenges as well?
No tax exemptions or corporate loopholes. Data centers right now, and I know we have important ones near my district. You know, Epic is an incredibly important employer, and they use data centers. There's tiny data centers that can exist inside of a building, but they got to pay their fair share. We're losing about $2 billion in revenue with these sales tax exemptions for data centers. Our plan is Control, Alt, Delete. Mm-hmm. Controlling, so it's controlling our alternative energy and deleting corporate subsidies. It's important that local control and community say has that if a community is to choose to have a data center, that the state enforcement mechanisms for protecting natural resources and ratepayers are in place, that there are no NDAs, legal resources are available for potential negotiations, and that people know that they're going to get money up front, and we're not going to be Foxconn, and taxpayers won't be on the hook. That we start investing in public utility infrastructure and renewable energy infrastructure, and that data centers, should they be here, have to pay their way. We are already seeing moratoriums locally. We want there to be more state enforceable mechanisms and laws in place, which is why I support a statewide moratorium.
How long?
At least 1 year. And this would not interrupt existing construction. I have talked to folks in the trades. I understand that these are important construction jobs, but I also want to make sure that these are union jobs that are offered, and that they are not, we're seeing impact from this growth of data centers and actually building other things like affordable housing developments, like our hospitals. I want us to be building more schools and improving municipal buildings and fixing our roads, and those being good union construction jobs. It would be irresponsible for the state to negotiate with entities that are on borrowed money, that are, that there are no guarantees. I don't want us to be in the business of negotiating under promises as opposed to enforceable mechanisms, or there to be clear cause of action for the state to take legal action. And I worry that with growing concerns around the use of flock cameras and the growth of surveillance and unregulated, unchecked AI growth, that the scale and speed in which these data center proposals are growing, the moratorium is the sensible and responsible response for us to make sure that we have the guardrails in place. And I think the negotiations and the urgency in which making sure we get something done about these parameters, that there are going to be a lot of people who are interested in getting that done early.
Why hasn't there been any bipartisanship on this one? This is one that we kind of saw coming. Why do you think that both sides haven't been able to come together to say, all right, let's figure something out for these communities when it comes to data centers?
That is a question I have for Robin Vos. The Democrats proposed 2 bills. I have my moratorium bill. There was also another bill that Representative Angela Stroud and Senator Havish Sinekin proposed that I think had over 40 Dem sponsors. The legislation is there. The conversations have been having with stakeholders. I think that people are trying to politicize this issue instead of actually getting something done. But I want to assure folks that that's why I introduced legislation.
I'm glad you cleared that up, and I know one thing is that Port Washington one, that was a big one with Vantage, because I know the community was hot. They were not happy. So this just seems like something that is easily bipartisan. So thank you so much for talking about that. And it needs to be a conversation had with Robin Vos. Now, Francesca, how would you work with Milwaukee leaders to solve the issue that we have with crime here? Crime is, people getting murdered here in the city of Milwaukee is down within the first 6 months of the year, but still way too many, especially when you compare it to an area like Madison. It blew my mind that Madison has some years in single digits murders, and Milwaukee can have in literally a span of 2 weeks the same amount of murders. How do you work with community leaders here in Milwaukee to help solve the issue with crime that we have?
I think a lot of community leaders already know what the community needs, and it's having a partner, a governor who is focused on delivering and actually moving a conversation. And as an organizer and as somebody who recognizes that I'm not willing to take no for an answer. I'm going to try to work through something and around something every which way to make sure that we can get resources and see this as the public health crisis for what it is. I think it's important that, again, going back to being serious about public safety, is making sure that communities have the resources that they need. And especially some of the smaller, whether it's a faith-based program, a small local nonprofit, that we are doing the work to seek out, because a lot of times the folks doing the most when it comes to direct services don't always have the time to set up a meeting with the governor, or they may not have the biggest like grant fund development director and staff to do that, right? Because they're actually the people who have the most trusted relationships with some of the folks who are struggling. And so how I plan to work is to make sure that I'm working as hard as them, and to not to make sure that the violence prevention is incredibly broad, but it is part of public health.
Absolutely.
And investment in public health, investment in our kids is one of the ways that I think we really can help tackle. But economic volatility, political volatility, I think can lead to violence. So the more we can stable and make sure that there are good paying jobs and good benefits, that people who are struggling, that resources are coming to them, that they aren't always having to seek it out, looking at investing in those structures.
Speaking of investments, as a Black man, I'm very much living in the city of Milwaukee. I'm very much focused on African American causes, like issues that matter to us. And a lot of that has to do with gaps. We talked about the opportunity gap, but we can talk about the educational gap, the income gap. You talked about the incarceration rate of Black and brown people. What does it look like if you're elected governor? What type of priority and emphasis would you put on making sure that Milwaukee is not always talking about segregation, talking about unemployment? How do we focus on getting the Black Milwaukee to a place of being prosperous? How will you help with that?
I think first and foremost, it's important that people know that unless Black people in Milwaukee thrive, the rest of the state can't thrive. We can't say that we love this state unless we love Black people. I truly think that when Milwaukee thrives, Wisconsin can thrive. Maybe it's really corny, but I want more people to love Black people.
I want more people to hire, build industry inside of the city of Milwaukee. Like I get so upset with Tammy Baldwin and Ron Johnson when we had a chance to potentially put the building of new USPS vehicles inside of the city of Milwaukee. I think Oshkosh Course was potentially working on getting inside of Milwaukee, inside of Central City, and they couldn't get it done. I just feel like people keep failing our community over and over again and point the finger at us like it's our fault.
That's evading accountability and responsibility. Resources, agency, for folks to have, not be told what they need, but right, I think it's a lot of it is making sure that the wealth stays in Milwaukee. There's a lot of wealth that leaves Milwaukee. Milwaukee's an economic engine for the state of Wisconsin. What does having more of that wealth stay in this community and then be distributed to the next generation of Black Milwaukeeans look like?
Yeah, that's my hope, because there's, a long time ago, you talk about the grandparents where they used to work at and great-grandparents where they used to work at, and now the face of Milwaukee has changed. So, one day I would love for it to be thriving again. And whoever the next governor is, if it is you, I hope there is a priority to work with our leaders.
Especially just one thing on economic development,
Yes.
I do think there is a responsibility and an opportunity to create more public sector jobs at local government, to invest in local tech colleges and our universities, that as somebody who is unabashedly pro-public, that the public sector jobs with good benefits, where we have more people from the community working for community as public servants, increasing and creating those job training programs to work for the state, the county, or the city, especially in a time where we are going to see the growth of AI take away many entry-level jobs. We already are seeing it, that the state has a responsibility to create good state jobs and work on a jobs guarantee.
Now, Francesca, we've been talking, great conversation today. Before we wrap up, got two more here for you. The first one is, so I saw on social media that you were celebrating the Knicks winning the championship. Now, my beef is this. I am a homer. If you don't know what a homer is, that means I love everything Wisconsin. Badgers, Bucks, Packers, Brewers. Give me Marquette. Give me UW and Panthers. Hell, Whitewater. I love Whitewater.
UW Green Bay.
UW Green Bay as
our
well.
women's hocky team, our national champions.
Yeah,
dynasty.
They are a dynasty indeed. And so with that, why are you look so happy celebrating the Knicks?
I love every Wisconsin team.
Uh-huh.
Every Wisconsin team. This is my home state, born and raised, raising my kid here. I love everything about Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. I'm a bandwagon fan for one day. Humans can hold multitudes. Mm. You know, we are complex beings. I had to celebrate for not the fans and certainly not the celebrity fans, but it's done now.
It is.
I had my one day of celebration. I don't feel anything anymore for them.
Good.
I will always feel things for all of my Wisconsin sports.
So we back on the Bucks bandwagon. I'm just gonna tell you this now. We're not bandwagon fans.
I was gonna say fan. I was like, I have a tattoo.
Oh, what's the tattoo say? No, I don't know about the tattoo. Oh, look at that. That's real. Bucks in 6. Look at that. She got it tatted on her. That's real. Now, I may be a Bucks fan, but I ain't got no tattoos on me. But that's great. I'm so excited for the season.
It was for a political fundraiser, too.
Oh, so. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Bucks in 6 tatted on Francesca Hong. Francesca, thank you so much for joining us here today. I do have my last question for you is this. What are your parting words for those who are listening? And tell us why you are the most qualified candidate out of the Democratic field and why you will beat Tom Tiffany.
We are in a movement moment, and the movement to build working class people power starts and grows with this campaign. Not only are we going to defeat Tom Tiffany in November, but we are going to ensure wins for Democrats moving into the future. I think that if people want real change and they trust not just the individual, but all of the people who are already building this campaign, to join us. Vote on August 11th and again on November 3rd. The most qualified person right now, the most electable person right now is the person who will be able to build the most diverse coalition and bring together working class people who have felt left behind for too long. We have shown that. We are doing that. We will continue to do that. And I'm looking forward to beating Tom Tiffany, not just by Wisconsin margins, but by in numbers. It's not about if we beat him, it's about by how much.
Heard that there. Francesca Hong, State Assemblywoman, also running to win the Democratic gubernatorial nomination. Thank you so much for joining us here on Truth to Power with Kyle Wallace.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyle.
Absolutely. Make sure you always tap into all of your favorite Truth to Power shows on 620WTMJ.com and also on YouTube on 620WTMJ. But until next time, this has been Truth to Power.